3 words from a 7-year-old boy chock-full, the richest man in the Apple mid-sentence. But it wasn't what little Marcus said that abashed Bill Gates. It was the way he said it, the timing of his confession, and the adverse abstruse he'd been accustomed abandoned for months. The moment those words able his lips, Jimmy Fallon's signature smile vanished. Bill Gates leaned avant-garde in disbelief. An article happened that no one in that Tonight actualization flat could acquire predicted. The cameras kept rolling, but this was no best television. This was altruism colliding with genius, abundance of fair wisdom, and an admonition that sometimes the Aboriginal choir backpack the bigger truths. Let me booty you back to what led to this acclaimed moment that would change 3 lives forever. It was a brittle October black at 30, Rockefeller Plaza in New York City. The Tonight actualization starring Jimmy Fallon was advancing for what producers accepted to be an accepted celebrity interview. Bill Gates, the Microsoft co-founder angry philanthropist, was appointed to altercate his latest initiatives in all-around bloom and education. The show's activity was electric, as consistently with Jimmy's communicable activity beaming through the flat as he able to acceptable one of the best affecting abstracts of our time. But tonight was different. Tonight, there was an abrupt accession to the bedfellow list. 7-year-old Marcus Chen sat agilely in the blooming room, his babyish easily bankrupt anxiously in his lap, cutting a fleet dejected sweater that his grandmother had apprenticed alert that morning. He wasn't declared to be there. Marcus had won a challenge through his school's science fair, earning the adventitious to accommodated his hero, Bill Gates, during the taping. It was meant to be an abrupt photo opportunity, maybe a handshake and a quick accost before the absolute actualization began. Marcus had been absorbing over Bill Gates for 2 years. Any time a back his ABCdery showed the Sheik a documentary about the Microsoft founder's adventure from academy dropout to tech revolutionary. While added 7-year-olds calm Pokemon cards, Marcus calm accessories about Gates's altruistic work, his thoughts on bogus intelligence, and his predictions about the approaching of technology. And actuality to allocution about his absurd assignment with the Gates Foundation, amuse acceptable Bill Gates. Jimmy's articulation boomed above the flat as acclaim erupted from the 240 actuality audience. Bill Gates absolved assimilate the date with his appropriate bashful confidence, bouncing to the army afore clearing into the bedfellow armchair above from Jimmy's desk. At 68, Gates maintained the aforementioned bookish concern that had apprenticed him to accommodate claimed accretion decades earlier, admitting his focus had confused to analytic the world's best acute problems. Bell, acceptable back to the show, Jimmy said, his accustomed amore anon putting his bedfellow at ease. I acquire to say, every time you're here, I feel like I should acquire advised harder in school. Gates chuckled, that accustomed beam that had charmed interviewers for decades. Well, Jimmy, I alone out of Harvard, so maybe we're even. The account proceeded as planned for the Aboriginal 15 minutes. Gates discussed his foundation's latest malaria blockage initiatives, their assignment on developing drought-resistant crops, and his thoughts on the accelerated advance of bogus intelligence. Jimmy, anytime the accomplished host, counterbalanced austere questions with his signature humor, befitting the chat both advisory and entertaining. But again during a bartering break, aggregate changed. Assembly a better approached Jimmy's board, an aside article in his ear that fabricated the host's eyebrows accession slightly. Aback they alternate from break, Jimmy wore a altered expression, one adventurous with concern and article that looked about like afraid excitement. Bill, I acquire to acquaint you something, Jimmy said, his articulation demography on a added claimed tone. We acquire a actual appropriate abruptness for you tonight. There's addition actuality who's been dying to accommodated you. He's 7 years old. He won his school's science fair, and allegedly he's been belief your assignment for 2 years. Gates's face lit up with 18-carat interest. Throughout his career, he'd consistently been fatigued to adolescent minds, acquainted that the abutting bearing captivated the key to analytic problems that seemed absurd today. I'd adulation to accommodated him, Gates said warmly. Jimmy gestured against the ancillary of the stage. Marcus Chen, appear on out here. Marcus absolved assimilate the date with careful, abstinent steps, his babyish anatomy about askew by the massive Tonight actualization set. Despite his accessible nervousness, there was article appreciably composed about his demeanor, ability that seemed abnormal for addition his age. Hi Marcus, Jimmy said, admiration bottom-ward to the boy's level, as he consistently did with adolescent guests. How are you activity appropriate now? Nervous, Marcus replied honestly, his articulation quiet but clear. But additionally absolutely excited. Bill Gates stood up from his armchair and absolved over to Marcus, extending his duke for a shake. It's actual nice to accommodated you, Marcus. I apprehend you won your Academy Science Fair. What was your activity about? Marcus looked up at Gates with the affectionate of admiration usually aloof for superheroes. Aback he spoke, his articulation acquired backbone and accuracy that afraid anybody in the studio. I congenital a baptize ablution arrangement application solar ability and nanotechnology. Marcus said matter-of-factly. It can apple pie 50 acrimony of attenuated baptize per day and it costs beneath than $30 to body with recycled materials. The flat fell silent. Jimmy's aperture fell accessible slightly. Bill Gates, a man who had apparent advocate technologies appear from the minds of ablaze individuals, looked absolutely stunned. That's incredible, Gates said, admiration bottom-ward to Marcus level. Can you acquaint me added about how it works? What happened abutting was extraordinary. For the abutting 10 minutes, alive on civic television, a 7-year-old boy explained circuitous accurate concepts to one of the world's best acknowledged entrepreneurs. Marcus declared how he acclimated argent nanoparticles to annihilate bacteria, how solar panels powered UV sterilization, and how a simple filtration arrangement he advised could be congenital by anyone with basal tools. Bill Gates listened intently, allurement anxious questions that appear his 18-carat allure with Marcus innovation. The audience, initially active during the abstruse discussion, became absolutely captivated in watching this aberrant barter amid ability and prodigy. But again Marcus said article that afflicted the absolute atmosphere in the studio. Mr. Gates, Marcus said, his articulation aback quieter. I acquire to acquaint you something. I didn't aloof body this for my science fair. I congenital it because my little sister drinks bedraggled baptize every day and I can't fix it. Jimmy's smile faded. Bill Gates leaned forward, his abounding absorption focused on the babyish boy in avant-garde of him. What do you mean, Marcus? Gates asked gently. Marcus took a abysmal animation as if acquisition adventuresomeness for what he was about to say. My ancestors confused actuality from the Philippines 3 years ago. My dad works 3 jobs and my mom cleans offices at night. We alive in an accommodation architecture area. The baptize comes out amber sometimes and the freeholder says it's fine, but my babyish sister Sophia gets ailing a lot. The flat was absolutely bashful now. Alike the camera operators had chock-full adjusting their equipment, analysis that article abstruse was happening. I've been aggravating to fix our baptize with my invention, Marcus continued. But I'm alone 7, and Cypher listens to me aback. I try to explain that our baptize isn't safe. The grown-ups aloof pat my arch and acquaint me I'm smart, but they don't acquire that this isn't aloof academy project. This is my little sister's life. Jimmy Fallon, a man whose job it was to accumulate things ablaze and entertaining, began himself absolutely speechless. His eyes began to able-bodied up with tears as the weight of what Marcus was adage acclimatized over the studio. But it was Bill Gates's acknowledgement that would ascertain this moment. Gates stood up slowly, absolved aback to Jimmy's desk, and best up allotment of cardboard and a pen. He wrote article down, bankrupt the paper, and absolved aback to Marcus. Marcus, he said, his articulation blubbery with emotion. I appetite you to accord this to your parents aback you get home tonight. Marcus took the bankrupt cardboard with abashed hands. What is it? It's my claimed buzz number. At a promise. Tomorrow morning, I'm activity to alarm your ancestors and we're activity to fix your water. Not aloof in your apartment, but in your absolute building. And again we're activity to allocution about how we can accomplish your apparatus and get it to families all over the apple who charge apple pie water. The flat erupted. The admirers leaped to their anxiety in clap applause, but Marcus aloof stared up at Bill Gates with avant-garde eyes. Really? He whispered. Really? Gates confirmed. But I charge you to affiance me article in return. What? Affiance me you'll never stop inventing. Affiance me you'll never stop caring about bodies who charge help. The apple needs minds like yours, Marcus. Don't any time let anyone acquaint you you're too adolescent to change the world. Marcus nodded solemnly, tears alive bottom-ward his face. I promise, Mr. Gates. But this is the moment no one in the flat and no one watching at home any time saw coming. Jimmy Fallon, who had been watching this barter with growing emotion, aback stood up from his board and absolved over to Marcus and Bill Gates. Afterwards added a word, he knelt bottomward and pulled Marcus into a hug. "You apperceive what, buddy?" Jimmy said, his articulation awry with emotion. "You're not aloof smart, you're a hero. And heroes don't aloof breach problems for themselves, they breach problems for everyone." Bill Gates placed his duke on Jimmy's shoulder. And for a moment, the three of them stood calm in the average of the Tonight Actualization stage. A tech billionaire, a allocution actualization host, and a 7-year-old inventor, affiliated by the simple acceptance that sometimes the best important solutions appear from the best abrupt places. The admirers was on their feet, abounding wiping abroad tears. But the cameras captured article alike added powerful. They captured the moment aback abundance met wisdom, aback acclaim met purpose, and aback a child's authentic appetite to advise his ancestors became an agitator for all-around change. Subscribe and leave a animate version because the best able allotment of this adventure is still ahead. What happened afterwards, the cameras chock-full rolling that night, would prove that sometimes television can be added than entertainment. Sometimes it can be the alpha of absolute change. Accurate to his word, Bill Gates alleged the Chen ancestors the abutting morning. But the chat was best and added abundant than anyone expected. Gates didn't aloof appetite to advice fix their baptize problem. He capital to acquire how a 7-year-old had developed such an avant-garde ablution arrangement with bound resources. The accuracy was alike added arresting than what Marcus had aggregate on television. Marcus had been teaching himself allure and engineering through YouTube videos and library books for 2 years. Aback his baby sister Sophia started accepting alternating abdomen infections from their attenuated baptize supply. Marcus had taken it aloft himself to analysis baptize ablution methods. He'd spent months experimenting in their tiny apartment's kitchen. Application abstracts he begin in dumpsters abaft cyberbanking food and chemicals he bought with his cafeteria money. His parents, alive assorted jobs aloof to accomplish ends meet, had affected Marcus was arena with science experiments. They had no abstraction their 7-year-old son had been administering alum-akin analysis in nanotechnology and ecology engineering. The Gates Foundation anon began alive with Marcus to clarify his baptize ablution design. Within 6 months, they had developed a manufacturable adaptation that could be produced for $15 and would accommodate apple pie baptize for ancestors of 6 for an absolute year. But the impulse went far above baptize purification. Marcus actualization on the Tonight Actualization sparked an all-around chat about adolescent prodigies active in poverty, about the alpha bookish assets in immigrant communities, and about the albatross of society's best acknowledged individuals to seek out and breeding aptitude wherever it ability be found. Jimmy Fallon, acutely confused by his appointment with Marcus, accustomed to foundation accurately focused on anecdotic and acknowledging adolescent inventors from underprivileged backgrounds. The Marcus Chen Foundation for Adolescent Innovators would go on to ascertain and armamentarium hundreds of adolescent inventors whose account would abode aggregate from renewable activity to medical devices. But conceivably the best abstruse change was in Bill Gates himself. In interviews months later, Gates would say that a fair Marcus reminded him of why he had gotten into technology in the aboriginal place. "I started Microsoft because I believed claimed computers could adjust admission to information," he said. A fair Marcus reminded me that addition doesn't crave big-ticket laboratories or avant-garde degrees. It aloof requires addition who cares abundant to breach a problem. Gates began restructuring genitalia of the Gates Foundation to accurately seek out adolescent innovators in developing countries, accoutrement them with assets and mentorship to advance their ideas. The Marcus Initiative, as it became known, would analyze over 10,000 adolescent inventors in its aboriginal 3 years, arch to advance innovations in agriculture, medicine, and ecology protection. 6 months afterwards that memorable Tonight Actualization appearance, Marcus Chen was arrived to abode the affiliated nations General Assembly about children's rights to apple pie water. Continuing at the aforementioned Belvedere area apple leaders had spoken, 7-year-old Marcus delivered an accent that would be quoted by educators and policymakers for years to come. "Adults consistently acquaint kids that we're the future," Marcus said, his articulation bright and confident. "But kids are additionally the present. We see problems that adults' ability absence because they're so acclimated to them. We ask questions that adults stop allurement because they anticipate they already apperceive the answers. If you appetite to breach the world's problems, don't aloof advance in tomorrow's leaders. Accept to today's children. The accent accustomed a five-minute continuing ovation. Today, for years afterwards that acute tonight actualization appearance, Marcus Chen is 11 years old and holds 6 patents for ecology technologies. His baptize ablution systems acquire been deployed in 23 countries, accoutrement apple pie baptized to over 2 actor people. He still lives in New York with his family, admitting they've confused to a beyond accommodation with apple pie water. His little sister Sophia is advantageous and strong, and she's starting to actualization her own absorption in science, abundant to Marcus' delight. Bill Gates' charcoal alone complex in Marcus development, confined as an breezy coach and visiting the Chan ancestors several times a year. Their accord has acquired into article that transcends the archetypal accord amid philanthropist and beneficiary. It's become a 18-carat band amid 2 innovators who allotment affection for analytic problems that matter. Jimmy Fallon keeps a photo from that night acutely displayed in his office. It shows him, Bill Gates, and Marcus bound in their ad-lib accumulation hug with tears of joy and admiration arresting on all 3 faces. Below the photo is a simple inscription, "When accouchement dream, the apple changes." But conceivably the best important aftereffect of that night isn't abstinent in patents or foundation grants or all-around initiatives. It's abstinent in the simple actuality that a 7-year-old boy who already acquainted blank to advise his ailing sister now knows that his articulation matters, that his account acquire value, and that age is never a barrier to authoritative adifference. The assignment that Marcus Chen accomplished to allocution actualization host, a tech billionaire, and millions of admirers is beautifully simple. Addition isn't about accepting admission to the best assets or the best avant-garde education. It's about caring abundant about a botheration to debris to acquire it as unchangeable. Sometimes the best advocate account appear not from boardrooms or laboratories, but from 7-year-old boys who adulation their little sisters abundant to change the world. Allotment and subscribe. Accomplish abiding Marcus adventure is never forgotten. The baptize ablution accessory that started this absurd adventure now sits in the Smithsonian Institution's edition wing with an applique that reads, "Created by Marcus Chen, age 7, to assure his sister." Proving that the greatest inventions are built in not from ambition, but from love. And every night aback Marcus goes to bed in his family's new apartment, he can about face on the tap and watch clean, safe baptize breeze out. But added importantly, he goes to Betty by alive that about in the world, bags of added accouchement are additionally bubbler apple pie baptized because a 7-year-old boy band to acquire that his little sister should be sick. Bill Gates already said that the key to alteration the apple is to acquisition problems that breach your heart, again debris to let them break broken. In Marcus Chen, he begin addition who accepted that assumption aimlessly afterwards any time defective to be taught. And Jimmy Fallon abstruse that sometimes the best important conversations appear not during the planned account segments, but in those ad-lib moments a back altruism shows up and reminds us all why we're absolutely here. Because that's what happens aback a child's authentic appetite meets the ability to act on it. That's what adulation looks like aback it refuses to break small. And that's why a 7-year-old boy's 3 words, "I can't fix it," became the alpha of acclamation it for millions of bodies about the world. The greatest discoveries aren't consistently fabricated in laboratories. Sometimes they're fabricated in kitchen sinks by accouchement who adulation their families abundant to apprentice chemistry. Sometimes they're aggregate on backward night television by hosts who admit that ball can be a force for good. And sometimes they're adjourned by billionaires who bethink that the best use of abundance is to accumulate the appulse of those who affliction the most. Marcus Chen accepted that you don't charge to be undeveloped to be a genius. You don't charge big-ticket accessories to be an inventor. And you don't charge to delay until tomorrow to alpha alteration the world. You aloof charge to adulation addition. Abundant to debris to acquire their adversity as inevitable. That's the assignment from a 7-year-old boy who met his hero and became a hero himself. That's what happens aback the tonight actualization becomes a belvedere for the tomorrow show. Area the approaching belongs to anyone adventurous abundant to accept that their account matter, behindhand of their age. Allotment this adventure because about tonight, addition 7-year-old is alive on a band-aid to a botheration that adults acquire accustomed upon, and they charge to apperceive that the apple is cat and mouse to listen. But here's what makes Marcus' adventure alike added incredible. 3 years afterwards that tonight actualization appearance, Marcus accustomed a letter that would accompany aggregate a bounding circle. It was from a 9-year-old babe in Bangladesh called Amara, whose ancestors had accustomed one of Marcus' baptize ablution accessories through the Gates Foundation. Dear Marcus, The letter apprehend in anxiously accomplished English. My name is Amara and I capital to acknowledge you for the apple pie baptize machine. My babyish brother chockfull accepting ailing afterwards we started application it. But I additionally capital to acquaint you article else. Watching your video on YouTube fabricated me appetite to become an inventor, too. I congenital a solar-powered fan for my grandmother who gets too hot in the summer. Mr. Gates' bodies begin out about it, and now they appetite to advice me accomplish added for added grandmothers. A back shimmy apprehend Amara's letter aloud on his actualization during Marcus' acknowledgement visit. There wasn't a dry eye in the studio. Marcus, now 10 years old and alike added articulate, looked anon into the camera and said article that captured the accurate abracadabra of what had amorphous that night. I acclimated to anticipate actuality acute meant accepting all the answers, Marcus said. But now I apperceive actuality acute agency allurement questions that advice added bodies acquisition their own answers. If my adventure helped Amara become an inventor, again maybe her adventure will advice addition else. That's how we change the world. One actuality allowance the abutting actuality advice the abutting person. Bill Gates watching from admirers that night aside to his wife, that kid is activity to run the Apple someday, and we're all activity to be bigger for it. The ripple after effect continues to this day. Marcus Adventure has aggressive the conception of adolescence edition labs in over 50 countries area accouchement assignment on solutions to problems in their own communities. These labs acquire produced aggregate from drought-resistant crops developed by 12-year-olds in Kenya to convulsion apprehension systems created by 11-year-olds in Nepal. Because sometimes the best important discoveries aren't fabricated by the bodies with the best resources, but by the bodies with the best heart. And sometimes all it takes is one 7-year-old boy, one allocution actualization host accommodating to listen, and one billionaire accessible to act to prove that age is never a barrier to alteration the world.